My brother called me in tears. They arrested me for drug possession at a traffic stop, planted evidence in my car, and I can't afford bail. When I walked into the precinct, the arresting officer froze and stammered, "Captain, I didn't know he was your brother." Officer Devin Carlisle's face went from confident to ash gray in the span of 2 seconds. He was standing near the booking desk at the 3rd Precinct, laughing with his partner Ryan Hoskins about something on his phone, when I walked through the front entrance in my civilian clothes at 11:30 on a Friday night. The desk sergeant, Francis Delgado, had called me 20 minutes earlier to give me a courtesy heads up that my younger brother Lucas had been arrested during a traffic stop and was being processed for felony drug possession. Sergeant Delgado's voice had been careful, measured, the tone you use when you're telling a fellow officer something that doesn't smell right, but you can't quite prove it yet. I had driven straight from my house in the suburbs, still wearing the jeans and polo shirt I'd changed into after my shift ended at 6. I wasn't in uniform. I wasn't wearing my badge. I was just Gabriel Thornton, concerned older brother, walking into a police station to check on family. But Carlisle recognized me anyway. Every officer in the city knew who I was. I had been a captain in the police department for 8 years, running the Major Crimes Unit, the division that handled homicides, organized crime, and internal corruption cases. My face had been in the papers, on the news, at departmental ceremonies. And now Carlisle was staring at me like he'd just swallowed broken glass, his mouth opening and closing without sound, while his partner Hoskins looked between us trying to figure out what was happening. I had been a police officer for 23 years, starting as a patrol cop right out of college, and working my way up through every rank and division the department had to offer. Narcotics, vice, homicide, eventually major crimes. I had made captain at 39, younger than most, and I had earned that promotion through case clearances and clean record, and a reputation for being fair but relentless. My younger brother Lucas was 28, 6 years my junior, and we had always been close despite taking completely different paths in life. I went into law enforcement. Lucas went into social work, spending his days counseling at-risk youth at a non-profit downtown. He drove a 10-year-old Toyota Camry, lived in a modest apartment in the city's arts district, and had never been in trouble with the law. Not even a speeding ticket. He was the kind of person who volunteered at homeless shelters on weekends and spent his own money buying school supplies for kids whose families couldn't afford them. The idea that he would possess illegal drugs, let alone deal them, was so absurd that when Sergeant Delgado had called me, my first reaction had been to laugh. Then Delgado told me the amount they were claiming they found, and I stopped laughing. 3 ounces of methamphetamine, packaged in individual baggies, hidden in the spare tire compartment of Lucas's trunk. Street value approximately $9,000. Enough to charge him with possession with intent to distribute, a felony carrying 5 to 15 years in state prison. Lucas had called me from the holding cell 30 minutes before Delgado's call, his voice shaking so badly I could barely understand him. "Gabe, they're saying I had drugs in my car. They're saying I'm a dealer. I've never even smoked marijuana. I don't know where it came from. They planted it. They had to have planted it. Please, you have to help me. I can't afford bail. I don't know what to do." I had told him to stay calm, not to say anything to anyone, that I was coming to get him. I had hung up and immediately called my own contacts in the department, trying to piece together what had happened. The traffic stop had occurred at 9:15 p.m. on Riverside Boulevard, a commercial area near the warehouse district. Lucas had been pulled over for allegedly failing to signal a lane change. The arresting officers were Devin Carlisle and Ryan Hoskins, both assigned to the Street Crimes Unit, a specialized division that focused on drug interdiction and gang activity. During the stop, Carlisle claimed he smelled marijuana coming from the vehicle and requested permission to search. Lucas, being cooperative and having nothing to hide, consented. 20 minutes later, they discovered the methamphetamine in his spare tire compartment and arrested him on the spot. Now I stood in the precinct lobby, staring at Officer Carlisle, watching him realize that he had just arrested the younger brother of one of the highest-ranking officers in the department. Hoskins caught on a second later, his expression shifting from casual indifference to something approaching panic. Sergeant Delgado, sitting behind the booking desk, had gone very still, his eyes moving between me and the 2 officers, like he was watching a bomb count down to detonation. I kept my voice level, professional, the same tone I used in command staff meetings. "Officer Carlisle, I understand you arrested my brother Lucas Thornton approximately 2 hours ago on drug possession charges." Carlisle swallowed hard. His hand moved unconsciously to his duty belt, a nervous gesture I recognized from years of reading body language. "Captain Thornton, sir, we didn't know he was related to you. The stop was routine. We found contraband in his vehicle during a lawful search." I took 3 steps closer. "What was your probable cause for the stop?" Hoskins spoke up, trying to sound confident. "Failed to signal lane change, Captain. Standard traffic violation." I pulled out my phone and opened the text Lucas had sent me before his panicked call, the one with a timestamp of 9:12 p.m. It was a photo he'd taken from his car window showing the street he was driving on, sent to me as part of an ongoing conversation we'd been having about neighborhood revitalization projects. The photo clearly showed his car in the right lane of Riverside Boulevard, with his turn signal blinking, reflected in the window of a storefront. I held up the phone so Carlisle could see it. This photo was taken 3 minutes before you initiated the stop. His signal was on, so I'll ask again. What was your probable cause? Carlisle's jaw tightened. We observed erratic driving patterns, weaving within the lane, possible impairment. I looked at Hoskins. Did you administer a field sobriety test? Hoskins hesitated. No, sir. He appeared sober, but we smelled marijuana, which gave us probable cause to search the vehicle. I kept my tone neutral, but my hands were clenched in my pockets. And where exactly did you find the drugs? Carlisle straightened slightly, regaining some composure. In the spare tire compartment of the trunk, 3 ounces of methamphetamine in individual distribution bags. I turned to Sergeant Delgado. I need to see my brother. Now. Delgado nodded and gestured toward the hallway leading to the holding cells. Cell 3, Captain. Take your time. As I walked past Carlisle and Hoskins, I heard Carlisle mutter under his breath to his partner. We followed protocol. Everything was by the book. I stopped, turned, looked him directly in the eyes. We'll see about that, officer. The walk to the holding cells felt longer than it should have. The hallway was painted institutional beige, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the smell of industrial cleaner and desperation hanging in the air. I had walked this hallway hundreds of times over my career, escorting suspects, interviewing witnesses, coordinating with detectives. I had never walked it to visit my own brother as a prisoner. Cell 3 had a small observation window. Through it, I could see Lucas sitting on the metal bench, his head in his hands, still wearing the button-down shirt and khakis he wore to work. He looked small, defeated. Nothing like the confident social worker who gave presentations to city council about youth intervention programs. I knocked on the window. He looked up. When he saw me, his face crumpled. The guard unlocked the cell. I stepped inside and pulled Lucas into a hug. He was shaking. Gabe, I swear to God, those drugs weren't mine. I've never seen them before. They pulled me over and said I didn't signal, but I did. I know I did. Then they said they smelled weed, but I don't smoke, I've never smoked. And they made me get out of the car and they searched everything and then suddenly they're pulling bags out of my spare tire and I'm being arrested and nobody would listen to me. His words came out in a rush, breathless, panicked. I held his shoulders and made him look at me. Lucas, listen to me. I believe you. I know you didn't have drugs in your car, but right now we need to focus on getting you out of here and then we're going to figure out exactly what happened. He wiped his eyes. Bail is set at $50,000. I don't have that kind of money. I can't afford a bondsman. Gabe, I'm going to lose my job. The nonprofit has a zero-tolerance policy for felony arrests. Even if the charges get dropped, my career is over. I kept my voice steady, even though rage was building in my chest like a pressure cooker. You're not going to lose your job. You're not going to lose anything. I'm going to get you out of here, and then we're going to prove those officers planted that evidence. I called my wife, Simone, from the parking lot. She was a corporate attorney, brilliant and unshakable, and she had contacts throughout the legal system. She answered on the second ring, already awake despite the late hour. I filled her in quickly. Her response was immediate. I'll make calls. Malcolm Drexler owes me a favor. He's the best criminal defense attorney in the state, and if those cops planted evidence, he'll tear them apart in court. I'll also wire the bail bond to get Lucas out tonight. Within 90 minutes, Lucas was released on bond. Malcolm Drexler met us at the precinct at 1 a.m, a man in his early 50s with silver hair and expensive suits who had built his career defending people the system tried to crush. He shook Lucas's hand, looked him in the eye, and said, I've reviewed the arrest report. This stinks from top to bottom. We're going to fight this, and we're going to win. We went to an all-night diner 3 blocks from the precinct. Malcolm ordered coffee and spread the arrest documentation across the table. Walked me through everything, from the moment they initiated the stop. Lucas recounted the entire incident while Malcolm took notes. The stop had occurred on a well-lit commercial street with multiple businesses still open. Lucas had been driving home from a late counseling session with a client whose family situation had required evening hours. He signaled before changing lanes to avoid a delivery truck parked in the right lane. Approximately 30 seconds later, red and blue lights appeared behind him. He pulled over immediately. Officer Carlisle approached the driver's side window and asked for license and registration. Lucas provided both. Carlisle asked where he was going. Lucas said he was heading home. Carlisle asked if he had been drinking. Lucas said no. Carlisle then claimed he smelled marijuana and asked Lucas to step out of the vehicle. Lucas complied. Hoskins searched the passenger compartment while Carlisle questioned Lucas on the sidewalk. After finding nothing in the cabin, Hoskins requested the trunk be opened. Lucas opened it. They searched the main trunk compartment. Nothing. Then Carlisle said they needed to check the spare tire area. Lucas watched them remove the tire, remove the plastic cover underneath, and suddenly Hoskins was holding up 3 clear bags of white crystalline substance, claiming they'd been hidden beneath the compartment liner. Malcolm tapped his pen against his notepad. Did you see them actually remove those bags from your car? Or did you just see them holding the bags after searching? Lucas frowned, thinking. I saw Hoskins bent over the trunk for maybe 20 seconds. His body was blocking my view of what he was doing. Then he straightened up with the bags in his hand and said they'd found drugs. I told them those weren't mine, that I'd never seen them before. But Carlisle just started reading me my rights. Malcolm looked at me. Captain, you know as well as I do that evidence can be planted in under 10 seconds by someone who knows what they're doing. If Officer Hoskins had those bags on his person before the search, he could have easily placed them in the spare tire compartment while his body blocked the view, then pretended to discover them. I had been thinking the same thing. I pulled out my phone and started making notes. We need the dashcam footage from their patrol vehicle. We need any security camera footage from businesses on that street. We need the chain of custody documentation for the drugs they seized. And we need to know if Officers Carlisle and Hoskins have any history of questionable arrests or excessive drug seizures. Malcolm nodded. I'll file discovery motions immediately. They have to turn over all evidence, including body cam and dashcam footage. If there are any irregularities, we'll find them. I looked at Lucas. Have you ever had any interaction with Carlisle or Hoskins before? Any reason they would target you specifically? Lucas shook his head. I've never seen them before in my life. I don't even know their names except from the arrest paperwork. That bothered me. Random traffic stops that result in major drug busts aren't random. Officers in the street crimes unit don't waste time on routine traffic violations unless they're fishing for something bigger. Either Carlisle and Hoskins had terrible luck and pulled over the one person connected to a police captain, or something else was going on. I decided to find out which. At 6 in the morning, after ensuring Lucas was safely home and had agreed to take a few days off work while we sorted this out, I drove directly to police headquarters downtown. I badged my way into the records division and requested the personnel files for Officers Devin Carlisle and Ryan Hoskins. The clerk, a veteran administrator named Dorothy Chen, raised an eyebrow but pulled the files without question. Wait, I can't use Chen. Let me use a different name. The clerk, a veteran administrator named Dorothy Finley, raised an eyebrow but pulled the files without question. I took them to a private conference room and started reading. Officer Devin Carlisle, age 31, 7 years on the force. Started in patrol, transferred to street crimes 3 years ago. 43 drug-related arrests in the past 3 years, with a conviction rate of 92%. That was high, unusually high. The average conviction rate for drug cases in our city was around 70%, because defense attorneys could often get evidence suppressed or cases dismissed on technical grounds. Carlisle's cases seemed bulletproof. I dug deeper into the arrest records. Almost all of his busts involved finding drugs in vehicle compartments during traffic stops, searches conducted after claiming to smell marijuana or observe suspicious behavior, and all of the seized drugs were methamphetamine or cocaine in quantities large enough to charge with intent to distribute. Officer Ryan Hoskins had a similar profile. Age 29, 5 years on the force, transferred to street crimes 2 years ago, 38 drug arrests, 89% conviction rate. He and Carlisle had been partners for 18 months, and their combined arrest record was impressive enough that they'd both received departmental commendations last year for their work disrupting drug trafficking. Too impressive. I pulled the evidence logs for their arrests. Something caught my attention immediately. In nearly every case, the drugs were found in hidden compartments, spare tire wells, door panels, under seats with false bottoms. And the amounts were always significant enough to trigger felony charges, but not so large as to suggest major distribution networks. 3 ounces here, 4 ounces there, occasionally 8 ounces. It was the sweet spot for prosecutors, enough to pursue serious charges without requiring extensive investigation into supply chains. I cross-referenced the arrest dates and locations. A pattern emerged. Carlisle and Hoskins made most of their arrests on Friday and Saturday nights, between 9 p.m. and midnight, in commercial or warehouse districts with limited foot traffic and surveillance coverage, areas where witnesses would be scarce. They initiated stops for minor traffic violations, claimed to detect marijuana odor, and found hard drugs hidden in vehicles driven by people with no prior criminal history. People who couldn't fight back effectively because they didn't have resources or connections. People like my brother. Except this time, they had made a critical mistake. They had arrested someone who happened to be related to a police captain with the authority and motivation to investigate them thoroughly. I spent the next 4 hours pulling every arrest report, evidence log, and case file related to Carlisle and Hoskins. By noon, I had identified 11 arrests over the past 18 months that followed the exact same pattern as Lucas's stop. Same time frame, same locations, same claim of marijuana odor, same discovery of methamphetamine in hidden compartments. I ran background checks on all 11 defendants. None had prior drug convictions. Most were working-class people. 3 were college students, 2 were teachers. 1 was a nurse. All had maintained their innocence. All had been convicted or pled guilty because they couldn't afford protracted legal battles, and their public defenders had advised them to take plea deals rather than risk trial. I sat back in my chair, feeling sick. If my theory was correct, Carlisle and Hoskins had been planting drugs on innocent people for at least 18 months, building impressive arrest records and conviction rates while destroying lives. The question was why. Were they doing it for career advancement, racking up stats to earn promotions and commendations? Were they working with someone who supplied them with drugs to plant? Or was there something else going on? I called Lieutenant Joanna Rains, head of internal affairs. We had worked together on corruption cases before, and I trusted her completely. She had 26 years on the force and a reputation for being incorruptible and thorough. She answered immediately. Captain Thornton, I heard about your brother's arrest. I'm sorry. Word traveled fast in the department. Joanna, I need to talk to you off the record. Can you meet me somewhere private? 30 minutes later, we sat in my car in the parking lot of a park 3 miles from headquarters. I handed her the files I had compiled. She read through them in silence, her expression growing darker with each page. Finally, she looked up. This is bad, Gabe. If what you're suggesting is true, we're looking at systemic evidence planting, false arrests, civil rights violations, and possibly organized corruption. I nodded. I need you to open an internal investigation, quietly. Don't tip them off. I want surveillance on Carlisle and Hoskins. I want their communications monitored, and I want every one of these prior arrests re-examined. Joanna closed the folder. I'll initiate the investigation immediately. But Gabe, you know I have to recuse you from any direct involvement because of your personal connection to one of the victims. You can't be part of the investigative team. I had expected that. I understand. But I can provide information and support in my capacity as a concerned citizen, and as the head of major crimes, which has jurisdiction over corruption cases. She gave me a look. Don't do anything stupid. Let internal affairs handle this properly. If you go off on your own and confront these officers, you'll compromise the entire investigation. I promised her I would stay within protocols. I meant it. But I also had no intention of sitting idle while my brother faced felony charges based on fabricated evidence. Malcolm Drexler filed motions for discovery that afternoon, demanding all video footage, evidence logs, and chain of custody documentation related to Lucas's arrest. The prosecutor assigned to the case, Assistant District Attorney Catherine Brenner, called me that evening. Catherine was a straight shooter, a career prosecutor who cared about justice more than conviction rates. She had worked with my unit on dozens of cases, and we had mutual respect. Gabe, I got the defense motions on your brother's case. I'm reviewing the arrest report and something feels off. The officer's narrative is textbook, maybe too textbook. I'm requesting the dash cam and body cam footage myself. If there's any irregularity, I'll move to dismiss. I thanked her and hung up, feeling slightly better. At least we had allies in the system who would help ensure Lucas got a fair shake. But I was still angry, still burning with the need to understand why Carlisle and Hoskins had targeted my brother specifically. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in my home office reviewing the arrest files again, looking for any detail I might have missed. Simone came in around 2 a.m, wearing her robe, carrying 2 mugs of tea. She set one in front of me and sat down. You're going to make yourself sick obsessing over this. Malcolm is an excellent attorney. Internal Affairs is investigating. The prosecutor is on our side. Lucas will be fine. I took her hand. What if he's not? What if Carlisle and Hoskins have covered their tracks well enough that we can't prove anything? What if Lucas ends up with a felony conviction and loses everything he's worked for? Simone squeezed my hand. Then we fight it in court, in the media, in every form available until the truth comes out. But you need to trust the process. You built your career on integrity and following proper procedures. Don't abandon that now. She was right. I knew she was right. But this wasn't just another case. This was my brother, the person I had protected since we were kids, who looked up to me, who believed that law enforcement existed to help people. If I couldn't protect him from corrupt cops, what did my career even mean? The dashcam footage arrived 3 days later via secure transfer from the prosecutor's office. Malcolm, Joanna Rains, and I watched it together in a conference room at police headquarters. The video showed the traffic stop from the patrol car's perspective. At 9:16 p.m., Carlisle and Hoskins activated their lights and pulled Lucas over on Riverside Boulevard. The video clearly showed Lucas signaling before changing lanes. He had not committed any traffic violation. That alone was enough to invalidate the stop, but we kept watching. Carlisle approached the driver's side window while Hoskins remained at the patrol car, running the license plate. The audio picked up the conversation. Carlisle asked for license and registration. Lucas provided both, his voice calm and cooperative. Carlisle asked where he was going. Lucas explained he was heading home from work. Then Carlisle said the words that would become crucial. "Sir, I'm detecting an odor of marijuana coming from your vehicle. Have you been smoking tonight?" Lucas's response was clear and firm. "No, officer. I don't smoke marijuana. I don't use any drugs." Carlisle requested permission to search the vehicle. Lucas hesitated, then said, "I don't have anything illegal in my car, but if you need to search it, go ahead." The video showed Lucas exiting the vehicle and standing on the sidewalk while Hoskins searched the passenger compartment. After 3 minutes, Hoskins radioed to Carlisle that the interior was clear. Carlisle then requested the trunk be opened. Lucas opened it from the interior release. The crucial moment came next. Both officers moved to the trunk area, blocking the dashcam's view of what they were doing. The audio picked up muffled sounds of movement, items being shifted, something being opened. Then, Hoskins's voice. "We've got something here. Looks like distribution quantities." The video showed Lucas stepping forward, trying to see what they were doing. Carlisle's hand appeared on Lucas's chest, pushing him back gently. "Sir, stay where you are. Do not approach the vehicle." Lucas's voice confused and frightened. "What are you talking about? I don't have anything in my car." Hoskins emerged from behind the trunk lid holding 3 clear plastic bags containing white powder. He held them up toward the dash cam, documenting the find. 3 bags, appears to be methamphetamine, found in the spare tire compartment. The rest of the video showed the arrest, Miranda rights being read, Lucas being placed in handcuffs, his car being impounded. Malcolm paused the playback. "The critical issue is that we cannot see the actual moment they allegedly found the drugs. Both officers positioned themselves to block the dashcam's view of the trunk interior. That's either incredibly sloppy police work or deliberate obstruction of documentation." Joanna Rains made notes. "Did they have body cams?" Malcolm checked the evidence list. "According to the property receipt, both officers were wearing body cams, but I haven't received that footage yet in discovery." Catherine Brenner, who had joined us for the review, picked up her phone. "They're required to activate body cams during all traffic stops. I'll request immediate production." She made a call to the evidence custodian. After a tense 2-minute conversation, she hung up, her face grim. Both body cams allegedly malfunctioned during the stop. Technical failure. Both cameras stopped recording approximately 30 seconds before they opened the trunk and restarted after the arrest was complete. The room went silent. Malcolm spoke first. "What are the odds that both body cams malfunctioned at the exact moment they found the drugs, and the dashcam view was blocked by their positioning?" Joanna's expression was stone cold. "0. Somebody turned those cameras off deliberately." This was it. This was the proof we needed that something was fundamentally wrong with the arrest. Officers didn't disable their body cams unless they had something to hide. Catherine Brenner stood up. "I'm moving to dismiss the charges against Lucas Thornton immediately. This arrest is tainted beyond recovery. No jury would convict based on this evidence." I felt a wave of relief so intense I had to sit down. Lucas would be cleared. The charges would be dropped. But that wasn't enough. "What about the other victims?" I asked. "The 11 other people Carlisle and Hoskins arrested using the same pattern? How many of them are sitting in prison right now because they couldn't fight back?" Joanna looked at her notes. "I've already started reviewing those cases. 7 resulted in guilty pleas. 3 went to trial and ended in convictions. 1 is still pending. We're going to need to examine every single arrest for evidence tampering and civil rights violations." Malcolm added, "If we can prove a pattern of misconduct, we can file for mass exoneration and pursue civil suits on behalf of all the victims." Catherine agreed. "My office will cooperate fully. If these officers have been planting evidence systematically, they need to be prosecuted criminally, not just fired." Over the next 2 weeks, the investigation exploded. Joanna Rains assembled a team of internal affairs investigators who conducted a forensic review of every arrest made by Carlisle and Hoskins. They discovered that body cam malfunctions had occurred in 9 of the 11 prior arrests at the exact moments drugs were allegedly discovered. They found evidence logs with irregularities in the chain of custody, suggesting drugs had been signed out of the evidence room before arrests occurred. They interviewed the defendants from previous cases, all of whom maintained their innocence and described nearly identical circumstances to Lucas's arrest. The most damning evidence came from a confidential informant who worked in the street crimes unit. The informant, a veteran officer who had grown suspicious of Carlisle and Hoskins's unusually high arrest rates, had been quietly documenting their activities for months. He came forward when he heard about the internal affairs investigation and provided recordings of conversations where Carlisle and Hoskins discussed their strategy. The recordings were devastating. In one conversation from 3 months earlier, Hoskins could be heard saying, "We just need to be careful about the amounts. Keep it under 10 ounces per bust. Enough to charge intent, but not so much that it triggers major investigation." Carlisle's response, "And make sure we're hitting people who can't fight back. No lawyers, no cops, no politicians. Just regular people who'll take plea deals rather than risk trial." Another recording from 6 weeks before Lucas's arrest captured them discussing their body cam strategy. Hoskins, "The IT guy said, as long as we report the malfunction within 48 hours and file the proper paperwork, nobody questions it. They just assume it's equipment failure." Carlisle, "And if anyone does ask, we say the cameras were damaged during the struggle or whatever. It's not like they're going to do a forensic analysis on every stop." They were wrong about that. Internal Affairs did conduct forensic analysis on the body cams. The tech unit determined that the cameras had been manually disabled using the master override function, which required a supervisor code. Further investigation revealed that Carlisle had obtained the override code from a sergeant in his unit by claiming he needed it for training purposes. The sergeant, a 30-year veteran named Dennis Kowalski, cooperated fully once confronted with the evidence. He admitted that Carlisle had asked for the code 18 months earlier, saying he was helping train new officers on equipment management. Kowalski had thought nothing of it and provided the code, never imagining it would be used to facilitate evidence planting. District Attorney Catherine Brenner convened a grand jury. Over 3 days, she presented evidence of systematic corruption, false arrests, evidence tampering, and civil rights violations. The grand jury returned indictments against both Devin Carlisle and Ryan Hoskins on multiple counts: conspiracy to violate civil rights under color of law, evidence tampering, filing false police reports, perjury, and official misconduct. Both officers were arrested at their homes on a Monday morning, just 16 days after Lucas's arrest. The media coverage was immediate and extensive. "Decorated officers charged with planting evidence in dozens of cases," read the headline in the city's major newspaper. "Corruption scandal rocks police department," announced the Evening News. The story gained national attention when details emerged about the number of innocent people who had been convicted based on fabricated evidence. I watched from the sidelines as the department I had dedicated my life to was forced to confront this failure. The police chief, a man named Raymond Sutherland, who had been in his position for 12 years, held a press conference acknowledging the betrayal. These officers violated their oaths, violated the public trust, and destroyed lives through deliberate and calculated misconduct. There is no excuse, no justification. We will cooperate fully with all investigations, and we will implement systemic reforms to ensure this never happens again. Internal Affairs expanded their investigation to review every arrest made by the Street Crimes Unit over the past 3 years. They found evidence of misconduct beyond just Carlisle and Hoskins. 2 other officer pairs had similar patterns of questionable arrests, though not to the same degree. Those officers were placed on administrative leave pending investigation. The department implemented mandatory protocols requiring all body cam footage to be uploaded automatically to secure servers within 1 hour of recording, with tampering detection algorithms and supervisor review requirements. 11 people who had been convicted based on arrests by Carlisle and Hoskins had their cases vacated and their records expunged. They were released from prison or freed from probation. Several filed civil lawsuits against the city. Lucas's charges were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they could never be refiled. Malcolm Drexler negotiated a settlement with the city for wrongful arrest and malicious prosecution. $350,000 plus an official apology from the police chief. Lucas used part of the money to establish a legal defense fund for people who couldn't afford representation in questionable drug cases. The trial of Carlisle and Hoskins began 7 months after their arrest. The prosecution, led by Catherine Brenner personally, presented overwhelming evidence of their scheme. The confidential informant testified about the conversations he had recorded. The tech unit explained how the body cams had been deliberately disabled. The 11 victims testified about their arrests and the destruction of their lives. Expert witnesses explained the statistical impossibility of the high conviction rates and the consistent patterns across all the arrests. The defense attorneys tried to argue that their clients had been aggressive in pursuing drug dealers, but had not deliberately planted evidence. That argument collapsed when the prosecution presented evidence logs showing drugs had been checked out of the evidence room by Carlisle on 3 occasions immediately before arrests, where those same drugs were allegedly discovered in suspects' vehicles. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. They found Devin Carlisle guilty on all counts. They found Ryan Hoskins guilty on all counts except conspiracy, apparently believing he had been following Carlisle's lead rather than being an equal partner in planning the scheme. Sentencing occurred 3 weeks later. The federal judge, Honorable Patricia Vance, who had presided over dozens of corruption cases during her 23 years on the bench, delivered a statement that was picked up by news outlets nationwide. These defendants were entrusted with enormous power, the power to deprive citizens of their liberty. They abused that power in the most egregious way imaginable, systematically framing innocent people for serious crimes in order to advance their careers and build reputations as effective officers. Their actions have undermined public trust in law enforcement, destroyed lives and families, and violated the constitutional rights of at least 11 citizens that we know of. There may be more victims we haven't identified. The harm caused by these defendants extends far beyond the individuals they directly targeted. Every legitimate arrest is now questioned. Every honest officer is now viewed with suspicion. The damage to the justice system is incalculable. Judge Vance sentenced Devin Carlisle to 18 years in federal prison. She sentenced Ryan Hoskins to 12 years. Both were ordered to pay restitution to their victims and permanently banned from any position in law enforcement. I sat in the courtroom gallery with Lucas, Simone, and several of the other victims as the sentences were read. Carlisle showed no emotion, staring straight ahead with the same blank expression he had worn throughout the trial. Hoskins cried, his shoulders shaking, whether from regret or self-pity I couldn't tell. As the bailiffs led them away in handcuffs, I felt a complex mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Justice had been served, but it couldn't undo the damage. People had lost years of their lives to prison. Families had been torn apart. Careers had been destroyed. And my own faith in the institution I served had been shaken in ways I was still processing. After the sentencing, Lucas and I went to lunch at a quiet restaurant downtown. We didn't talk much at first, just sat with the weight of everything that had happened. Finally, Lucas spoke. "I keep thinking about what would have happened if I wasn't your brother. If I was just a regular guy with no connections, no resources to fight back. I would be in prison right now, serving a 5-year sentence for something I didn't do." I nodded slowly. "I know. And that's exactly what happened to 11 other people before you. They didn't have someone like me or Malcolm or Catherine fighting for them. The system failed them completely. Lucas looked at me. But it worked for me because of who I'm related to. That's not justice, Gabe. That's privilege. He was right. And it burned. So what do we do about it? I asked. Lucas had clearly been thinking about this. The defense fund I set up helps, but it's not enough. We need systemic reform. We need independent oversight of police conduct. We need automatic review of arrests when patterns emerge. We need prosecutors who are willing to question police testimony instead of just accepting it. We need judges who take evidence tampering seriously from the start, not just after someone with resources fights back. I listened to my younger brother, the social worker who counseled at-risk youth, lay out a vision for criminal justice reform that was more sophisticated than most policy papers I'd read. He had always been the idealist in the family while I was the pragmatist. But maybe idealism was exactly what the system needed. Over the next year, I used my position and influence to push for changes in the department. We implemented new protocols for evidence handling, requiring 2-officer verification for all narcotics seizures with mandatory video documentation that couldn't be disabled. We created an independent civilian review board with subpoena power to investigate complaints against officers. We established automatic statistical analysis of arrest patterns, with flags triggered when any officer's arrest demographics or conviction rates deviated significantly from department averages. We required prosecutors to automatically review any case where body cam footage was missing or incomplete. Not everyone in the department supported these changes. Some veteran officers complained that we were making their jobs harder, that we were treating them like criminals instead of trusting their professional judgment. I understood their frustration, but I also understood that trust had to be earned through transparency and accountability, not demanded based on the authority of a badge. The Carlisle and Hoskins case had proved that some people would abuse power if given the opportunity, and if there were no systems in place to detect and prevent that abuse. Lucas went back to his work at the nonprofit, but the experience had changed him. He became an advocate for criminal justice reform, speaking at community forums and legislative hearings about his arrest and the broader implications of police misconduct. He testified before the state legislature in support of a bill requiring independent investigation of all police corruption allegations. The bill passed with bipartisan support and became law 8 months after his arrest. Simone and I had long conversations about whether I should stay in law enforcement after everything that had happened. She never pushed me one way or another, but she asked the right questions. Do you still believe in the work? Do you still think you can make a difference? Or has this broken something fundamental in how you see the system? I struggled with those questions for months. Eventually, I realized that the answer was complicated. Yes, my faith in the system had been shaken. Yes, I had learned that corruption could exist even in units I thought were clean. Yes, I understood that my brother had only received justice because of who he was related to, and that was deeply unfair. But I also believed that walking away would be the wrong response. If people like me, people who cared about integrity and accountability, abandoned law enforcement, we would be leaving it entirely in the hands of those who didn't share those values. I stayed. I used my position to mentor younger officers, to emphasize the importance of constitutional rights and ethical conduct, to create systems that made misconduct harder to hide. I promoted officers who demonstrated integrity even when it was difficult. I removed officers who showed signs of the same behaviors that had corrupted Carlisle and Hoskins. It wasn't enough to fix everything, but it was something. 2 years after Lucas's arrest, I attended a community forum on police reform. Lucas was one of the speakers, along with 3 of the other victims of Carlisle and Hoskins's scheme. They shared their stories, described the terror of being arrested for crimes they didn't commit, the helplessness of being trapped in a system that presumed police testimony was more credible than their denials. After the forum, a young woman approached me. She was probably in her mid-20s, wearing jeans and a university sweatshirt. Captain Thornton, my name is Alicia Freeman. I was one of the people Officer Carlisle arrested 3 years ago. I spent 18 months in prison before my case was vacated. I remembered her case from the investigation files. College student, arrested during a traffic stop, methamphetamine allegedly found in her glove compartment. I'm so sorry for what happened to you, I said. She shook her head. I'm not looking for an apology. I just wanted to say thank you. If you hadn't fought for your brother, if you hadn't pushed for the investigation, I would still be in prison. My life was destroyed, but at least now I have a chance to rebuild it. My conviction is expunged. I'm back in school. I have hope. That wouldn't have happened without you. I didn't know what to say. I hadn't fought for her. I had fought for Lucas. Her exoneration was a side effect, not the goal. She seemed to sense what I was thinking. I know you were protecting your family, but the thing about systemic corruption is that exposing it helps everyone, even the people you didn't know existed. You started something that became bigger than your brother's case. That matters. After she walked away, Lucas came over and put his hand on my shoulder. She's right, you know. This became about more than just me. It became about fixing a broken system. You did that, Gabe. Not perfectly, not completely, but you did it. I looked at my brother. the person I had protected since we were kids, who had grown into someone who didn't need my protection anymore, but still valued my partnership in fighting for justice. We did it, I corrected. All of us. Everyone who refused to accept that innocent people should be in prison just because corrupt cops decided to frame them. 3 years after the arrests of Carlisle and Hoskins, the police department held a ceremony recognizing officers who had demonstrated exceptional integrity and service. I was asked to present one of the awards. The recipient was the confidential informant from the Street Crimes Unit who had provided the recordings that helped convict Carlisle and Hoskins. His name was Officer Thomas Ellison, a 15-year veteran who had risked his career and personal safety to expose corruption in his own unit. When I handed him the award, he said something I'll never forget. I became a cop to help people, not to watch them get destroyed by officers who forgot that's what we're supposed to do. When I saw what Carlisle and Hoskins were doing, I had a choice. I could stay silent and protect my career, or I could speak up and risk everything. Your brother's case gave me the courage to choose speaking up. So really, this award belongs to everyone who refused to stay silent. The ceremony reminded me why I had joined law enforcement in the first place. Not for power or authority, but because I believed in justice, in protecting people who couldn't protect themselves, in being part of something that made communities safer and stronger. Carlisle and Hoskins had perverted that mission, but they didn't represent all officers. Most cops were like Thomas Ellison, people trying to do difficult work with integrity and compassion. Lucas is 31 now, still working at the nonprofit, still advocating for criminal justice reform. He never got over the trauma of being arrested and facing years in prison for a crime he didn't commit, but he channeled that trauma into productive activism. He testified before Congress last year in support of federal legislation requiring independent oversight of police misconduct investigations. The legal defense fund he established has helped 19 people fight questionable drug charges, resulting in 12 dismissals and 7 acquittals. He's become a recognized voice in criminal justice circles, someone prosecutors and defense attorneys and policymakers consult when designing reforms. I'm proud of him, not just for surviving what Carlisle and Hoskins tried to do to him, but for refusing to let that experience make him cynical or defeated. Simone tells me I should be proud of myself too, for exposing the corruption and protecting my brother. I am, in a complicated way. But I'm also haunted by the question Lucas raised at that lunch 3 years ago. What about all the people who don't have someone like me fighting for them? How many innocent people are sitting in prison right now because they were targeted by corrupt officers and didn't have the resources or connections to fight back? I don't have good answers to those questions. I can only keep working to build systems that make corruption harder to hide and easier to detect. I can mentor young officers and emphasize that our legitimacy depends on our integrity. I can support reforms that create accountability and transparency. I can listen to people like Alicia Freeman and remember that every case matters. Every victim deserves justice, not just the ones related to police captains. Devin Carlisle and Ryan Hoskins are both serving their sentences in federal prison. I check their status occasionally, not out of vindictiveness, but out of a need to know that they're facing consequences for what they did. Carlisle has been denied early release twice. Hoskins is eligible for parole in 4 years. I hope they've spent their time in prison reflecting on the lives they destroyed, but I suspect that kind of self-awareness is beyond people who could plant drugs on innocent citizens to advance their careers. The department has changed in the 3 years since their convictions. Not perfectly, not completely, but measurably. Complaints of police misconduct are down 28%. Conviction rates for drug cases have dropped to more realistic levels, suggesting prosecutors are scrutinizing evidence more carefully. The Civilian Review Board has investigated 36 cases and recommended discipline in 19, with 3 officers terminated for misconduct. It's progress, built on the foundation of my brother's nightmare and the determination of everyone who refused to accept that justice should be reserved only for those with power and privilege. If you made it this far, hit like, you've earned it.